This week on Christian World News, abuse in the church. Among the victims, a pastor's daughter. The culprit? You won't believe it when you hear it. Plus, meet the Jewish philanthropist who's dedicated to helping Christian missionaries in Africa. And Isaiah's Holy Highway. The newest government in the Middle East is being linked to biblical prophecy. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Christian World News. I'm George Thomas. Pastor Jimmy Hinton never expected that something evil was going on in his church. Then he met with a young woman who delivered explosive news that would rock not only his church, but his family. CBN's Heather Sells brings us that story from Somerset, Pennsylvania.
Clara and John Hinton married in 1970 at the small Christian college where they met, and 2 years later they moved east to start their dream ministry.
We were kids when we moved to Somerset, Pennsylvania. We were 22 years old. I had prayed from a young child up for a Christian husband. That's all I ever wanted, was a Christian husband, and I wanted to be a Christian wife and mother.
John became pastor of the Church of Christ, and they went on to have a large family, 11 children.
He was very relaxed and very calm, very kind. He was great with the kids. He was their go-to person. He was my spiritual leader. We would spend many hours talking about God and our faith.
She and many others considered John to be a super dad. Their fifth son, Jimmy, adored his dad, and as he grew older, began to appreciate his ministry.
I remember sitting in the pews here and hearing him preach and hearing the passion behind it, and he just knew his Bible really well. And I just remember thinking, I want to be standing up there one day. I want to be making a difference in the world one day.
Both dreams would come true, but not in the way Jimmy had hoped. Even as Clara and Jimmy perceived an ideal family, John Hinton kept a double life hidden that neither ever suspected, although Clara did struggle to understand some of his behavior.
He would just do off-the-wall things. For instance, he would be preaching and do really weird things. He threw a lit firecracker in the auditorium one morning, and it's like, why do you do this stuff?
Another time, one of their daughters found him locked in his office looking at pornography. He later said he was doing sermon prep. But one of his victims was growing up, and at age 20 realized not only had Hinton abused her, he was likely abusing others. That victim was Hinton's youngest daughter.
I saw this picture of my dad touching me in an inappropriate way, but it was one of those things that I would try to play it off like, oh, he wouldn't actually do that to me. Maybe it was an accident. Maybe I'm not remembering something correctly, or I just kept trying to brush it off.
But when he asked her to help him babysit, she could no longer brush it off.
One of the kids had said that she loved spending the night at his house. And she had asked him that day, are we spending the night at your house tonight, Mr. John? And can we sleep in your bed?
Alex began to research and discovered her dad matched the profile of an abuser, and she matched the profile of a victim. But should she tell? After weeks of indecision, she went to her mom.
At that moment, it was like a million light bulbs went off, because so many little fragments of things that happened all along the years.
It became clear that they must tell Jimmy, son, brother, and current pastor of the church. Alex made an appointment to meet him.
It just takes the breath away from you. And I looked up and she was crying and I started to cry. I said, I believe you. And I think she needed to hear that. And the way I describe it is, I really think that was the Holy Spirit putting those words on my lips in that moment. because I really think she had to hear that.
That very weekend, Jimmy had to officiate a church wedding with his father present. He found it excruciating to keep this news secret. But the next decision, whether to report his dad to authorities, came much easier.
You had so much to lose by reporting.
Yes, I had everything to lose.
So why was that a snap decision for you?
Because I had to know. I had to know the truth. And reporting it and having it investigated by professionals was the only way that we were going to find out the truth.
Police charged Hinton with 200 counts, including rape of a child and indecent assault of a child. His sentence, a minimum of 30 years behind bars. His family never expects to see him again, but 7 years later is still working through what happened. Jimmy remembers the community's early misplaced sympathy for his dad.
When he got arrested, they would ask me, how's your dad doing? How's your dad doing? And at first I would answer it and I would be polite, but then after a while I just thought, not one person has asked how my dad's victims are doing. And so I started to answer people. I'd say, well, he's doing fine. It's his victims who aren't doing well.
Alex has traveled a road that is not uncommon for abuse victims of spiritual leaders. She stopped attending church and has no desire to go back to her faith.
I don't like the idea of God as a fatherly being, clearly. If that's who he is, he wasn't there for me. If my dad was supposed to be someone who was spreading his word, that's not the case at all.
As Jimmy Hinton has said, the devil got inside our family and none of us saw it. But today, Hinton, his mother, and his sister are seeing much more clearly. And they want other families and churches to know that sometimes someone close to you is an abuser.
Today, the Church of Christ has new measures to protect kids. Each classroom has a lock to keep empty rooms empty. And church policy protects children from potentially unwanted contact.
None of us can walk up to a kid, pull a kid in, and initiate that physical contact. And I think that's really important because abusers very subtly initiate physical contact, and that's how they begin what people call the grooming process.
Boz Javidjian founded the nonprofit Grace to help churches think through abuse. Many, he says, are quick to believe abusers.
What you'll often see is an abuser responding to an allegation in a way that spins a narrative that they're the actual victim. And then what ends up happening over the time period is the people around them, the people that are naturally would gravitate towards wanting to support them anyway, buy into that narrative. And now the abuser is the victim. The victim now is seen as sort of the perpetrator, the one causing the problems.
Javidjian says churches will be best prepared to prevent abuse and respond to it if they've taken the time to create a policy. Such plans help church members know what to report and to whom, and they help leaders respond. Clara and Jimmy now co-host a podcast designed to share what they've learned. They want others to know how easy it is to be fooled.
What's interesting in a sad, sad way is he preached about such things, about being harmful to children, and he was this great dad. It was like he's two people. He was this wonderful, loving, kind man, and he was one of the most evil, vile men that ever was.
If you or someone you love has been a victim of sexual assault, we invite you to go to our website, cbnnews.com, for a list of organizations you can contact for help. That includes the National Sexual Assault Hotline, which will connect you with trained counselors in your area. Up next, a Jewish philanthropist is giving away his personal wealth, all to help Christian missionary doctors in Africa.
CBN presents The I Wills of God, your path to overcoming fear and anxiety.
We're going to talk about some of the incredible promises God has made to His children
In Pat Robertson's newest teaching, you'll discover the I wills of God. I will rescue him, protect him, answer him, be with him in trouble, deliver him, honor him, satisfy him with long life, show him my salvation, and see amazing stories of God's promises in action.
What I felt was loved and treasured.
God spared my life twice in 3 days.
The good Lord had given me a second chance.
Break free from stress and despair.
The Lord doesn't want you to live in fear, but to know the rewards given to those who love God.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit cbn.com. The I wills of God, your path to overcoming fear and anxiety.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphan's Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Welcome back. A Jewish businessman and philanthropist is giving millions of dollars of his wealth to help Christian missionary doctors in Africa. Mark Gerson, along with his wife, Rabbi Erica Gerson, is giving $5 million over the next 10 years to fund Christian mission teaching hospitals across the African continent. The Gersons say the goal is to provide excellent health care and train the next generation of African health professionals. Working with Africa Mission Healthcare Foundation, the Gersons hope the funds will give Africans access to quality, compassionate healthcare for generations to come. Joining me to discuss the initiative is Jewish philanthropist and entrepreneur Mark Gerson and Dr. John Fielder. Both, by the way, are co-founders of African Mission Healthcare Foundation. Gentlemen, thanks for coming on the show. Mark, why does a Jewish philanthropist like yourself care about helping Christian missionary doctors in Africa?
Well, first, George, thank you. And the Torah tells us more than it tells us anything else. It tells us 36 times in various ways to love the stranger. So when my wife, who's a rabbi, and I think about how best we can discharge that Jewish obligation to love the stranger, we're drawn to the most effective and efficient way to do so, which is to support the Christian medical missionaries who are providing care to the poor in Africa.
John, to you, how do you propose to put this $5 million to use?
Well, this incredible gift from the Gersons will allow us to support 2 young, growing mission teaching hospitals in Africa. And each of those facilities will receive $250,000 every year for 10 years to help them solve a variety of problems like water and power and internet and scholarships for their health workers and housing, whatever that hospital needs to make sure that it's growing and training more African healthcare professionals.
Mark, Christian missionary hospitals, as you know, provide 1/3 of medical care in Africa. So these institutions are vital lifelines in Africa, right?
Absolutely. These institutions are not only vital lifelines, but they are often the only place where the African poor can come and get any kind of medical care. So very often, almost always, the difference between getting any medical care and getting no medical care is the Christian medical missionary serving in that hospital.
John, how challenging is it to get good, reliable health care in Africa?
You know, George, we're here in Houston now at Lakewood Church with our friend, Dr. Paul Osteen, who is both a minister at Lakewood Church, but he's also a general surgeon and a medical missionary who spends a lot of his year in Africa. And sometimes he's in Zambia, in a region the size of Louisiana, and he is the only general surgeon sometimes in that whole entire area.
And talk about some of the challenges that they face, just for example, in Zambia and other places like Burundi, in South Sudan. If you can elaborate a little bit more on that, John.
Well, you know, first for the patient, even getting to the hospital, the roads are bad. The hospital can be 20, 25 miles or more away without any vehicles or ways to get there. Power is often unreliable. That means water then is often unreliable. Equipment is old or non-existent. So people are really stringing together very limited resources to try to save people's lives and relieve suffering.
And in some of these places, as we look at the video, the story from Burundi of the Kibuye Hope Hospital, where Dr. John Fader is part of the mission there. When you look at the challenges that folks like him and so many others, Mark, across the continent face, these folks, they give up their lifestyles in the United States, in other parts of the world, to go to these remote corners of Africa to put their practice and their skills to practice, right, Mark?
Absolutely. George, these people are moral superheroes. I mean, the extent of the gift that they give to humanity is extraordinary. And if I hadn't seen it, I wouldn't have believed it. But these are true superheroes who are devoting their entire lives to living in conditions that most of us would consider impossible, working in medical conditions that all the doctors I know say are impossible, except they're not because these physicians work in them to provide the indispensable care to the African poor. And the least that I can do, the least that we can do is to support their work, to, as John said, to help create power, medicine, electricity, water, equipment, the basics of what they need to provide the care to the patients that they do.
Okay, terrific, guys. We need to leave it right there. Thank you so much for joining us on the show again.
Thank you, George.
Up next, a new democracy forms in the Middle East. It includes women, Christians, and minorities. No wonder some say it's linked to a biblical prophecy.
Parents, the Superbook Bible app is a great way to get your child reading the Bible, because in today's busy world, we can use some help. The free Superbook Bible app has fun stuff your kids will love. They'll have a blast learning the Bible, playing great games, watching cool videos, discovering heroes in the Bible. They'll have fun while they learn God's Word. The Superbook Kids Bible app, available now.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Discover the I wills of God. I will rescue him, protect him, answer him, be with him in trouble, deliver him, honor him, satisfy him with long life, show him my salvation.
What I felt was loved and treasured.
God spared my life twice in 3 days.
The good Lord had given me a second chance.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com. The I Wills of God, the latest teaching from Pat Robertson.
5 years ago this month, violent protests and killings rocked Ukraine's capital city as demonstrators took to the streets demanding political change. I was there in Kyiv as tens of thousands of protesters faced off with Ukrainian authorities on Maidan Square in the heart of the capital. It was a dangerous time for Ukraine. Half the country wanted closer ties with Russia. The other half wanted better relations with the West. The protests spread to scores of cities, threatening to tear the country apart. During the crisis, Ukrainian Christians played an important role trying to bring peace. 5 years later, with parts of eastern Ukraine still under Russian separatist control, CBN is on the ground delivering humanitarian aid to those on the front lines.
Even 5 years later, there are still shelling going on, and people are losing their life along the front road. We have been there. We have been the recipients of major grants. We have also started about 50 different churches. And so wherever there's chaos, God has people there to meet the spiritual hunger. And that is what CBN is doing along with the physical aid.
CBN doing great work around the world. Turning to the Middle East, if anything positive comes out of Syria's civil war, it could be the new government that's being formed in the northeast part of that country. It's based on equal rights and religious freedom, and some are linking it to biblical prophecy. Chris Mitchell reports from Washington.
This new government runs from the Tigris to the Euphrates rivers.
We have a political system that was based on a social contract between all the groups, Arabs, Kurds, Syrian Christians. In this social contract, they articulated how they want to live together as diverse ethnicities and diverse religions.
Bassam Issac is seeking support from U.S. leaders for this new government. He calls it a golden opportunity.
I don't think ever any political system in the Middle East guaranteed religious freedom. If you go back hundreds and thousands of years, this has not happened.
They also see a common bond.
Much of our aspiration actually is in line with the American Revolution. We don't want a country where citizenship and rights are based on ethnic identities or religious identity. We want all Syrians to be equal. We believe they were all created by God equal and to be free.
They also find inspiration in the Bible, where the prophet Isaiah wrote of a holy highway from Assyria, part of modern-day Syria, through Israel and Egypt.
This is actually our dream, is that the highway, that the crescent will be the Isaiah crescent, Lord willing, because it's a crescent of peace and prosperity. And according to Isaiah, when this Isaiah crescent is established, it will be a blessing for the whole earth. So we are really yearning for the Isaiah crescent.
Yet he says they need protection so this dream and democracy can stay alive. Ishaq says he wants to tell President Trump the existence of Christians there hangs in the balance given surrounding threats.
So I would say to him, Mr. President, God is entrusting you. God has entrusted America with power and ability. Please seek God, ask God before you make the decision, so that Christianity is not eradicated from Syria and from historical Mesopotamia.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Washington.
When we come back, Billy Graham's grandson carries on the family legacy. That story right after this.
When you give, smiles grow bigger. When you care, homes are happier. When you comfort, the hurt goes away. When we all come together to love, miracles happen.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphan's Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes and Google Play now.
Billy Graham's grandson, Will Graham, just completed his first evangelistic celebration in the Philippines. As Lucille Talusan reports from Manila, thousands of people came to Christ.
To cry out for him so he can rescue us.
Billy Graham's grandson brought his evangelistic celebration to the Philippines during a time of great political unrest. National and local elections are scheduled for May, and there have already been politically motivated violence and deadly bombing attacks in the south.
When those things take place, I think it's even more imperative to preach the gospel. That's what it's going to change lives.
The timing and location of this event holds a special memory for the third-generation evangelist, occurring just days before the first anniversary of his grandfather's death. Will says Dr. Billy Graham greatly influenced his life and misses giving his grandfather news of God's work.
I wish I could go back and the Tuesday I would go up and tell my grandfather what I did in Manila. Oh, Daddy Bill, you won't believe it. I preached in the same place you preached in 1977. And, you know, I don't have that anymore, so I missed that part.
Will held evangelistic meetings with people across all levels of Philippine society. On the last 3 nights, churches mobilized people to attend the big celebrations and hear a message of hope in Jesus Christ.
Tens of thousands of people have responded to the altar call, and this is a very historical moment because on this place, the Carino Grandstand at the heart of Metro Manila, is also where Reverend Will's grandfather, Dr. Billy Graham, his father, Franklin Graham, have also preached the gospel and led millions of Filipinos to Christ.
84-year-old Luz Alvarez attended Dr. Billy Graham's evangelistic crusade in 1957. 62 years later, she served as a counselor for Will Graham's celebration. She said, "I can still remember it was raining hard because there was a storm that night in 1957. But many people still came, as many as the people who are here tonight. I am so happy that now I am listening to his grandson. They are a big blessing to the Philippines."
This is the power of God into salvation. It tells us that God loves us, that God wants to restore us, and he paid the price by going to the cross, dying on the cross, and then 3 days later rising again from the dead. And that's what my grandfather preaches, that's what my father has preached, and that's what I want to continue to preach, because it is this that changes lives.
Lucille Talusan, CBN News, Manila, Philippines.
Thank you, Lucille. Continuing the family tradition. Thanks for joining us on this week's edition of Christian World News. Hey, until next week, goodbye and God bless you.